I didn't know my life could collapse in a single sentence. "You're just my retirement plan," my fiancé said casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "Before I marry you, I need one last fling with a bad boy." That was exactly 4 weeks before our wedding. I remember the room going quiet, not silent, but hollow, like all the air had been sucked out. My heart didn't race. It didn't shatter dramatically. It just dropped. Heavy, cold, final. I smiled. Not because I understood, not because I agreed, but because something inside me shut down to survive. "Okay," I said. That word would cost him everything. At the time, I still believed this had to be some kind of nightmare, that I'd wake up, laugh nervously, and tell myself I'd imagined it. But here I am, 3 a.m., typing my story to strangers on the internet because I have nowhere else to put the truth without it poisoning me from the inside out. 2 days ago, someone knocked on my door and said, "I don't even know where to start, but you deserve to know." And suddenly, everything I thought I knew about my life, my engagement, my home, my future, rearranged itself into something unrecognizable. I had been with Blake for 3 years, engaged for 6 months. Our wedding was scheduled for September 15th at a gorgeous venue just outside the city. Invitations sent, deposits paid, my dress already hanging in the closet, untouched since my final fitting. I thought I was marrying my forever. Instead, I found out I was being managed, planned around, calculated, filed under assets. They say betrayal feels like a knife in the back. That's a lie. Real betrayal feels like realizing the person sleeping beside you every night was never there to love you, only to wait. Wait for the right moment. Wait for the paperwork. Wait for the payoff. And the worst part? I didn't see it coming. But I see everything now. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I was 31 when I met Blake, and at that point in my life, I thought I knew exactly who I was. I worked as a supervisor at a logistics warehouse. Nothing glamorous, nothing Instagram-worthy, but it paid the bills. $65,000 a year, stable hours, a team that respected me. I liked knowing where my next paycheck was coming from. I liked building things slowly, brick by brick. Blake felt like the exciting contrast to my steady world. We met at a house party hosted by mutual friends. I remember him leaning against the kitchen counter, laughing too loudly, confident in a way that drew attention without trying. He had that effortless charm, handsome, witty, ambitious, the kind of man who made you feel chosen just by looking at you. We talked for hours that night, about travel, about work, about the future. When he asked for my number, I didn't hesitate. Looking back, I should have noticed how carefully he asked questions. What do you do exactly? Do you rent or own? Do you like stability, or are you more spontaneous? At the time, I thought he was just interested. The first year was easy, too easy. We fell into a rhythm that felt natural. Weekends together, inside jokes, late-night conversations that made me believe we were building something real. Blake worked as a dental assistant at an upscale practice downtown. He complained constantly about the patients, the hours, the drama, but he liked the image, the lifestyle, the proximity to money. After a year, we moved in together, into my house, the house my grandmother Rose had left me when she passed away. A modest 1950s colonial, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, solid bones, paid off completely, no mortgage, no debt. I remember standing in the doorway with Blake on move-in day, keys in my hand, feeling proud, not just of the house, but of what it represented. Security, a foundation. "This is such a blessing," he'd said, running his hand along the doorframe. "You're so lucky." At the time, I thought he meant us. My mother adored him. She helped with the wedding planning, called Blake the son I never had, and cried when we got engaged during a mountain weekend last summer. He gave me the ring at sunset, on one knee, voice shaking just enough to feel sincere. I said yes without hesitation. But there were signs. Small ones. He always wanted to know how much things cost. Asked detailed questions about my savings, made comments about how safe I was, how I'd always be taken care of. I told myself that was appreciation. His friends, especially Ashley and Madison, never liked me much. They joked that I was too settled, that Blake deserved more excitement. I laughed it off, told myself I was being insecure. Even his brother Marcus once said, half joking, "You're Blake's upgrade plan." I didn't ask what he meant. I didn't want to know. Because when you're in love, you don't look for cracks. You look for forever. And I truly believed that's what we were building. Right up until the moment he sat me down on the couch and told me I was never the destination. Just the investment. The strange thing about betrayal is that it never arrives screaming. It tiptoes in. At first, nothing felt wrong, just slightly off, like furniture moved an inch to the left. Easy to ignore, easier to rationalize. Blake started coming home later than usual. Not drastically late, just late enough to explain away. Traffic was awful. The office ran behind. We had drinks after work. I believed him because I wanted to. But then his phone habits changed. He started keeping it face down on the table, taking calls in the bathroom, smiling at messages he wouldn't explain. When I asked who he was talking to, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "Just work stuff, you worry too much." I hated how easily that silenced me. His friends became louder in our relationship too, especially Ashley and Madison. They were always there, always commenting, always planting seeds. "You're lucky Colleen is so patient." Not everyone wants to settle down this early. Some people need to experience more before committing. They said it like advice, like concern. But every time they spoke, Blake grew quieter, more distant, like he was weighing something. Then there were the jokes. "You're too nice," Blake laughed once at dinner, swirling his wine. "I mean that in a good way." I smiled, even though something in my chest tightened. Too nice, too safe, too predictable. He began framing our life together like a compromise instead of a choice. The house, my house, became a topic more often than it should have. "Must be nice not having a mortgage." "You don't even realize how much freedom this gives us. We're set, Colleen. We don't have to struggle like other couples." But his eyes never softened when he said it. They calculated. The tension finally surfaced 2 days before I was supposed to make the final venue payment. Blake sat me down on the couch, hands clasped, jaw tight. "Colleen, we need to talk." Those words never mean anything good. "I've been thinking a lot," he said slowly, "about what my friends have been saying." I muted the TV. "What friends? Saying what?" He hesitated, like he was choosing the least damaging version of the truth. "They think I might be settling." The word landed like a slap. "Settling," I repeated. "We're getting married in 4 weeks." "I know," he said quickly. "That's why this matters now." Then he mentioned her. Riley, a woman who hung out at Whiskey River when Blake went out with friends. Tattoos, motorcycle, loud laugh, reckless energy. "She's different," he said. "Dangerous, exciting, the kind of person who lives without regrets." My stomach turned. "And what does that have to do with us?" "I think I need to experience that," he said quietly, "before I commit forever." I laughed, because it had to be a joke. It wasn't. "You're asking to cheat on me," I said. "It's not cheating if we're on a break," he snapped. "Just 2 weeks, to get it out of my system." 2 weeks. Like I was a subscription he could pause. When I said no, when I told him it was insane, he exploded. "You're controlling," he accused. "Selfish. A real woman would want me to be sure." That was the moment something shifted. Not shattered. Shifted. He packed a bag and said he was going to stay with his brother Marcus for a few days, to think. I stayed downstairs numb. Then I heard his voice upstairs. On the phone. Laughing. "Yeah," he said, "the plan's working perfectly." That was the first time I felt real fear. Because whatever was happening, it had started long before I noticed. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, one hand wrapped around a glass of water I no longer remembered pouring. "The plan's working perfectly." Blake's voice drifted down from our bedroom. Calm, amused, confident. Not the voice of a confused man questioning his future. Not the voice of someone in emotional turmoil. The voice of someone executing something. My pulse thudded in my ears so loudly I was sure it would give me away. I took a step closer, my bare feet silent against the hardwood floor, my breath shallow and careful. "He's completely thrown off," Blake continued, "just like we expected." "We." That word made my stomach twist. A woman's voice replied through the phone speaker, low, familiar. I couldn't hear every word, but I recognized the cadence. "Marcus's girlfriend, Ashley, Madison?" I didn't know, but I knew this wasn't casual gossip. "Are you sure she bought the whole bad boy thing?" the woman asked. "It feels risky." Blake laughed. "Colleen is exactly as naive as I thought. She has no idea what's coming." I felt something cold slide down my spine. Naive. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself as he continued, lowering his voice just enough that I had to strain. "Give it a few days. She'll be begging me to come back. She always does. By then, everything will be in place." Everything? What everything? My mind raced. Contracts, deposits, the house, the wedding. 100 puzzle pieces floated through my thoughts, none of them fitting yet, but all of them sharp. 10 minutes later, Blake came downstairs with an overnight bag slung over his shoulder. He didn't look at me, didn't explain, Didn't apologize. He just opened the door and slammed it hard enough that the picture frames in the hallway rattled. I stood there long after the sound faded, staring at the empty space he'd left behind. That was the moment denial died. The next morning, I woke up with a strange clarity. My hands shook as I made coffee, but my thoughts were razor sharp. I started making calls. The venue first, because logic felt safer than emotion. The woman on the phone was kind but firm. We were inside the 30-day window. $6,000. Gone. Non-refundable. I thanked her anyway and hung up. The photographer charged a smaller cancellation fee. The caterer said they'd see what they could do. By the end of the day, I'd tallied the damage. Ahem. It hurt, but not as much as marrying the wrong man would have. When I called my mother, she cried. "Oh, honey," she said through tears. "I never wanted to say anything, but something always felt off about him." "Moms always know," I whispered. 4 days later, Blake came back. Thursday, 7 p.m. I heard his knock before I saw him. When I opened the door, he looked exactly like a man who'd practiced this moment in the mirror. Mascara smudged beneath his eyes, voice trembling, hands shaking. "Colleen, please," he said. "I'm so sorry. Can I come in?" I stepped aside. He collapsed onto this couch like he belonged there, dabbing his eyes with tissues he'd brought with him. "I made a terrible mistake," he said. "My friends got in my head. I lost sight of what mattered." I stayed standing. "You walked out for 4 days," I said quietly, talking about sleeping with someone else. "I was confused," he sobbed. "Being away from you made me realize everything. The house, our future, the life we're building. The house. There it was. I wanted to believe him. God, I did. Weddings are expensive. Hearts are stubborn. Love doesn't vanish just because it's betrayed." So I said we could talk. That night, while Blake was in the shower, steam fogging up the bathroom mirror, I made a decision that changed everything. I opened his bag. Receipts spilled out like confessions. Luxury dinners. A downtown Marriott. 3 nights. A boutique called Silk and Lace. $400 of lingerie that was not for me. All dated during the days he'd claimed to be thinking. When I confronted him, he cried again, but this time I watched closely. His story shifted. Riley had taken advantage of him. He'd been vulnerable. He regretted everything. "I love you," he said. "Please forgive me." I was still processing when my phone rang. It was my coworker, Jace, and what he told me made my blood run cold. Because Blake's betrayal didn't start 4 days ago. It started weeks before. I didn't tell Blake about Jace's call right away. I couldn't. My mind felt like it was filled with broken glass. Every thought sharp, every memory cutting deeper the longer I held it. Jace's voice echoed in my head as I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the wood grain of the table like it might anchor me. 3 weeks ago. That was when he'd seen Blake at the mall, laughing, shopping for lingerie with his brother Marcus, joking about a backup plan. 3 weeks before Blake ever sat me down on that couch and pretended this was all sudden confusion. Nothing about this was sudden. I told Blake I needed time, that I was overwhelmed, that I couldn't just pretend everything was fine. He nodded, contrite, playing the role perfectly. "I'll give you all the space you need," he said softly. "I'll stay at Marcus's for now. I don't want to pressure you." Pressure. The irony almost made me laugh. Once he left, I walked through the house slowly, like a guest in my own life. The couch where we'd planned our honeymoon, the kitchen where we'd talked about kids, the bedroom where his clothes still hung in the closet beside mine. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. How did I miss this? Had I been too trusting, too eager to believe the best in someone who never deserved it? When Blake texted later that night, "I love you. Please don't give up on us." My fingers hovered over the screen. I didn't reply. The next day I called my mom again. "He came back," I said. She sighed, long and heavy. And I don't know who he is anymore." There was a pause, then gently, "Sweetheart, love doesn't make you feel unsafe." That sentence settled into me like truth finally finding its place. Still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. I needed to be sure. Because if I was going to blow up my life, end an engagement, walk away from 3 years, I needed facts, not feelings. So when Blake asked if we could try again slowly, I said yes. I hated myself a little for it, but the moment he moved back in, I saw it clearly, the performance. He cooked my favorite meals, cleaned without being asked, touched me gently like he was afraid I'd break, spoke endlessly about rebuilding trust, about how this scare had shown him what really mattered. Watching him was nauseating, because every "I love you" felt rehearsed. Every kiss felt strategic. One night, he left his phone charging on the counter, unlocked. I stared at it for a long time before touching it, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. Then I picked it up. Using a recovery app my cousin had once mentioned, I restored deleted messages. What I found made me physically ill. Texts between Blake and Riley, going back 2 months. Not flirting. Planning. Screenshots of my house pulled from real estate sites. Questions about property rights. Messages labeled Phase 2. One text from Riley read, "Are you sure this is worth it? That's a lot of work." Blake replied, "It's worth $180K free and clear. Plus, she has a stable income. This is my retirement plan." My retirement plan. The words blurred as tears finally spilled down my face. Later that week, I ran into Marcus at the grocery store. He smiled, casual, unaware. "It'll be nice when the house officially becomes yours after the wedding," he said. Something in my expression must have shifted because he froze. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. He stammered, backtracked, left in a hurry. That night, when I helped Blake grab something from his car, I found the folder. Legal consultation notes. Not wedding planning. Divorce planning. Property rights. Inherited assets. Emotional abuse claims. I took pictures with shaking hands. That was when the truth finally settled. I wasn't his fiancé. I was his strategy. And now I had to decide how to end it, without letting him take anything else from me. Once you see the pattern, you can't stop seeing it. Every smile from Blake felt like a transaction. Every apology came with an invisible calculation attached. I started noticing how carefully he chose his words, how he steered conversations back to the future we were supposedly rebuilding. Our future, our home, our stability. Always circling back to what he stood to gain. I kept playing my part, quiet, wounded, willing to work through things, while documenting everything. Screenshots, photos, dates, times. I backed everything up to a cloud account Blake didn't know existed. I felt paranoid, but I'd learned paranoia was just another word for self-protection when someone was trying to outmaneuver you. The pressure didn't come from Blake alone. It came from his family. Marcus called first. "Blake's been a mess," he said, voice heavy with concern. "He really screwed up, but he loves you. You've always been the stable one. Don't throw this away over a mistake." A mistake. I swallowed my anger. This wasn't a mistake, Marcus. It was a plan. There was silence on the line. Then he sighed. Relationships are complicated. So was fraud. Ashley and Madison reached out next. Thinly veiled sympathy wrapped in judgment. "You can't expect one person to be everything forever," Ashley texted. "Men need freedom before they commit," Madison added. I stopped responding. Blake, meanwhile, doubled down on being the perfect fiancé. He talked about therapy, about cutting off toxic influences, about how Riley meant nothing. But every time the house came up, his energy changed. So I tested it. One night over dinner, I said casually, "I've been thinking, maybe after the wedding, we should sell the house." His fork froze midair. "Sell it?" he asked too quickly. "Yeah, it's big for just 2 people. We could downsize, use the money to travel, or move closer to your work." The color drained from his face. "No," he said, "absolutely not." I raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "It's sentimental," he insisted. "Your grandmother lived here. She'd want you to keep it." That was rich. He'd met my grandmother twice and spent both visits on his phone. "She was practical," I said. "I think she'd understand." He slammed his glass down harder than necessary. "This house is our future, where we'll raise kids. You can't just throw that away." There it was. Not love. Possession. I knew then I was done. But I wanted one final truth. So I laid everything out one evening when he came home smiling, hopeful. "Blake, we need to talk." I placed the printed screenshots on the table. The texts, the legal notes, the research. His face shifted, panic flickering for half a second before hardening. "You went through my phone?" he snapped. "That's controlling." "I know everything," I said calmly. "The plan, Riley, the house, the divorce lawyer." He tried to deny it, then minimize it. Then finally, he stopped pretending. "You were an easy mark," he said flatly, "a woman with a paid-off house and a soft heart." The words hurt less than I expected, because by then, I already knew. But then the doorbell rang, and everything changed. Riley stood on my doorstep, not smiling, not smug, just tired. "I think you deserve the truth," she said. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Riley stood on my doorstep like a ghost from the lie Blake had built. Leather jacket, dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp but uneasy. She wasn't the reckless, dangerous fantasy he'd painted. She looked human, tense, like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. Blake stiffened behind me. "What the hell are you doing here?" he snapped. Riley ignored him and looked straight at me. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because this went further than I ever thought it would. I stepped aside without thinking. The three of us stood in my living room, the air thick and brittle. This was supposed to be my safe place, my grandmother's house. Now it felt like a crime scene. Say what you came to say, I whispered. Riley took a breath. He approached me a month ago, told me he was engaged to a woman with a house, your house, said he needed an exit strategy. Blake laughed harshly. That's not how it... Stop, she cut in. I'm not lying for you. She turned back to me. He asked me to help make you look controlling, jealous, possessive, said if there were witnesses, text records, a narrative, it would help later. Later. Divorce. Property. My knees weakened, and I sat down hard on the arm of the couch. He offered me money, Riley continued quietly. Said if things went his way, I'd get a cut, half of whatever he got. Blake exploded. You're a liar! Then why did you text me about phase 2, she shot back. Why did you send me screenshots of her house? Silence, the kind that crushes. Riley's voice softened. I didn't agree. I don't play games like that. But when I realized he'd already started messing with your head, I felt sick. She glanced at me. I told his coworker Jace what I'd seen. The mall, the jokes about the backup plan. So that was it. Even the woman he used as bait had more integrity than the man I was going to marry. When Riley left, the house felt emptier than it ever had. Blake turned to me, anger gone, replaced by irritation, as if this confrontation had been an inconvenience. You're overreacting, he said. This didn't have to blow up like this. I stared at him. 3 years. 3 years of shared mornings, shared plans, shared dreams, and this was what remained. You never loved me, I said. He shrugged. Love is complicated. Security isn't. Something inside me finally broke, not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. I went upstairs and locked myself in the bedroom. I lay on the floor beside the bed, staring at the underside of the frame, listening to my own breathing like it belonged to someone else. My chest hurt. My head throbbed. I felt foolish, used, ashamed. I replayed every memory, every laugh, every promise, searching for something real. There was nothing left to salvage. At 3:00 a.m., I cried silently so I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of hearing it. That was my lowest point, because losing him wasn't the pain. Realizing I'd never been loved was. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay on the bed with my eyes open, watching the faint blue light of dawn creep through the curtains. And for the first time since Blake came into my life, my mind was quiet. No excuses, no bargaining, no, maybe if I try harder. Just clarity. At 6:12 a.m., I stood up, showered, and got dressed like I was going to work. Calm, deliberate, steady. When I walked downstairs, Blake was already in the kitchen, scrolling on his phone, coffee in hand, acting as if the night before had been nothing more than a minor argument. Morning, he said without looking up. We need to talk later. I poured myself a glass of water. No, I replied, we don't. That made him glance up. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've already decided. He frowned, confused. He was used to me needing time, needing reassurance, needing him. I'm ending this, I said. Today. A laugh escaped him. You're being dramatic again. I met his eyes, really met them, and for the first time, I didn't flinch. This house is not shared property, I continued evenly. It was inherited. My name only. You have 30 days to move out. The color drained from his face. You can't just kick me out. I can, I said, and I will. He set his mug down too hard. You think you're some kind of victim? You'd be nothing without me pushing you. I almost smiled, because that sentence, that one, was the final gift he gave me. You didn't push me, I said. You hid behind me. Silence fell again, but this time it belonged to me. I went upstairs and began packing, not my things, but his. I didn't rush. I folded his clothes neatly, placed his watches in a box, gathered the little pieces of his life that had infiltrated mine. With every item I touched, something lifted from my chest. By noon, I had called a lawyer. By 1, I had changed the passwords to every account in my name. By 2, I had canceled the wedding venue, the florist, the caterer. Each cancellation felt like closing a door I should never have opened. Blake hovered, pacing, alternating between anger and charm. You'll regret this, he warned. You'll come crawling back, he said an hour later. We're good together, he tried again, softer. I didn't answer. Because the turning point wasn't something I said. It was something I stopped doing. I stopped explaining myself. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the living room gold, I handed him a folder. What's this? He asked. Notice to vacate, I replied, and a list of items you're allowed to take. Anything else stays. His hands shook. You think you won, he muttered. I looked around the house. The walls my grandmother painted herself. The floor where I learned to walk. The windows that had watched me grow. I didn't win, I said softly. I survived. He left shortly after, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames. I locked it behind him. Then I slid down against it and exhaled. For the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. That night, I made a single promise to myself. I will never again beg someone to see my worth. And that promise, that quiet, unbreakable vow, was the beginning of everything. The silence after Blake left was deafening. Not the peaceful kind, not yet, but the kind that makes you acutely aware of every creak in the house, every echo of a life that no longer exists. I spent the first night sitting on the couch with all the lights on, my phone face down, resisting the urge to check whether he'd texted. He didn't, but the world started whispering anyway. By morning, the first message came from Jace. I'm sorry, I should have said something sooner. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. You did the moment it mattered, because that was the truth. Silence protects the wrong people. Speaking up, even late, still matters. The next call was from Blake's sister. She didn't yell, she didn't defend him. She just sighed. He did this before. Different woman, different house. That sentence landed heavier than any insult. By noon, the story had spread through his office. Not the version Blake rehearsed, but the one stitched together by screenshots, timelines, and people finally comparing notes. The engagement ring came off my finger and into a drawer. I didn't cry when I took it off. That surprised me. What surprised me more was how quickly Blake unraveled once he realized I wasn't chasing him. He showed up 3 days later without warning. I didn't open the door. I know you're in there, he called through the wood, his voice tight. You don't get to shut me out like this. I leaned against the wall on my side, phone recording. You made your choices, I said calmly. Now live with them. His tone shifted. I was stressed. You know how work was. You're blowing this out of proportion. Gaslighting. Textbook. Predictable. I'm not discussing this, I replied. Please leave. He laughed bitterly. You'll regret ruining this. Nobody's going to put up with you like I did. There it was. I didn't respond. When he finally left, I sent the recording to my lawyer. That evening, I blocked his number. The fallout wasn't just personal, it was professional. Blake missed deadlines, snapped at coworkers, lost a major client when Jace refused to cover for him again. Consequences aren't dramatic. They're quiet. They look like people stepping back, like doors not opening, like excuses no longer working. 2 weeks later, I ran into Riley at a coffee shop across town. She hesitated when she saw me, clearly unsure whether to approach. I'm glad you're okay, she said when I nodded her over. Thank you for telling the truth, I replied. She smiled faintly. I figured if I was going to be part of someone's story, it wouldn't be as the villain. Neither of us mentioned Blake again. I didn't need closure from him. I already had it, from myself. I started reclaiming my life in small ways. I repainted the guest room. I took my mornings back. I signed up for a class I'd always postponed because Blake didn't see the point. Every choice was mine now. One night, as I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, the weight in my chest finally lifted. I realized something important. I wasn't healing because he was gone. I was healing because I chose myself. And once you do that, truly do that, there's no going back. 6 months later, my life looked nothing like it used to. And that was the point. The house felt brighter, not because the walls had changed color, but because the air no longer carried tension. I moved furniture without asking permission. I opened windows without worrying someone would complain about the draft. I filled the space with music I liked, silence when I wanted, laughter when it came naturally. Freedom, I learned, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It settles in. I stopped introducing myself as someone's fiancé, stopped explaining why I was still single, stopped shrinking. The wedding fund became something else entirely. I renovated the back porch my grandmother always dreamed of finishing. I booked a solo trip I'd postponed for years. I invested in myself, not recklessly, not dramatically, but intentionally. Every dollar went somewhere chosen, not sacrificed. Blake, meanwhile, faded. Not in a cinematic crash. No public meltdown. No grand apology tour. Just erosion. Mutual friends stopped inviting him. His promotion stalled. The charm that once smoothed everything over stopped working when there was no one left to blame but himself. I heard about him the way you hear about old weather. Apparently he moved again. He's dating someone new. That didn't last long. None of it stirred anything in me. The final encounter came unexpectedly. I was at a charity event, one I supported long before Blake decided it was a waste of time, when I felt a familiar presence behind me. I turned. There he was, older somehow, tired around the eyes, less certain. You look good, he said. I smiled politely. Thank you. A pause stretched between us. I didn't think you'd actually leave, he admitted. I studied him for a moment and realized something surprising. He wasn't my villain anymore. He was just a man who underestimated a woman who finally stopped doubting herself. That, I said calmly, was your mistake. He swallowed. I messed up. Yes, I replied, you did. No forgiveness speech. No dramatic closure. No reopening of wounds. Just truth. I excused myself and walked away, heels steady, spine straight, heart light. That night, as I stood on my porch under soft lights, I reflected on everything I'd lost and everything I'd gained. I lost a man who saw me as a safety net. I gained myself. And that was the ending he never planned for. Because the greatest revenge isn't anger. It's peace. It's growth. It's becoming so whole that the person who broke you no longer fits anywhere in your life. I locked the door behind me, smiled into the quiet, and stepped fully into the future, unafraid, unburdened, and finally, free.